Amun outside Isis's bedchambers, leaning his head against the door. He isn't eavesdropping because the people occupying the chambers are asleep. He knows this because he just stepped out of the chambers and is now standing in a hallway of Queen Eve's castle. He is thinking about the conversation he and Isis had earlier. He mumbles under his breath, "It is our duty," and pushes himself away from the door and heads down the hall towards the Queen's chambers. Queen Eve's castle is built high in the cliffs of the giant foothills sloping northeast of the great volcano of the Five Kingdoms in the Kingdom of Eden. They will be traveling ahead of her god in disguise. The captain of the guard was not happy, but Queen Eve assured him she will be all right, and reluctantly he agreed. Amun is confident nothing will happen, but she is a very popular person, and her fellow humans can't help themselves when she is around them. They want to see her and talk to her. Pushing and shoving usually follows, and then fights break out. They mean no harm. It is just the effect she has on them. She knows Amun will protect her with his life. And so they set out for Kushra. Their travels take them south through West Karnath, which is mainly forest and unpopulated. During the 3-day trip, they talked of many things, and one of the topics they discussed is Eden's other immortal protector, Isis. Amun always feels like he is floating when he talks of Isis. He says, "One time, when we were younger," Eve smiles up at him and cuts him off. "Younger? Like when you were only 200 years old?" She laughs. He laughs too. Her laugh is contagious and genuine. You can't help but laugh with her. He says through his laughter, "No, not that young. I think we were in our 400s. With her beautiful smile still in full bloom, she shakes her head in amazement. He continues, "We were in our outside training facility. She and I were training with dull weapons. She had a sword and I had a long staff, if I remember correctly. She got a lucky strike against me. Amun hit the dust, holding his left forearm. Isis was laughing and leaned over to help him up. Come on. I didn't swing that hard." Her laughter cut short when she saw the odd angle of his arm. Oh no. She helped him and they both looked at his arm in shock. Wincing in pain, he said, "I didn't know that that could happen. I think my arm is broken." She immediately started apologizing and tears were quivering in her eyes, but never spilled. She didn't want to alarm Amun and didn't want him to know she was scared. Thinking back to their medical studies of human anatomy, she knew what needed to be done. They are all superhuman, and the bone will heal quickly, so no time needed wasted. She said briskly, "This may hurt," and reached out so fast he only saw a blur. She grabbed the arm with both hands, one on each side of the break, and jerked one hand one way and the other the opposite way to set the bone. Amun screamed so loud the caretakers in the next field all stopped what they were doing and looked their way. He dropped to one knee and was breathing hard as the pain faded. He squinted up to her with annoyance plain on his face. She was blocking the sun. Her hands were on her hips and her head cocked way to the right, and she had a smile of an amused sibling. Her light brown skin glistened with sweat and her gray eyes were mocking. She said, "Are you going to live, Almighty Protector?" He stood up, flexing his fingers, and looking at his arm, he said again, "I didn't think that could happen." I was shocked that she broke my arm. "She packs a powerful punch," he says, smiling at the memory. Eve says, "I thought you were immortal." Amun nods and says, "We are mortal, but not indestructible." Eve says, "I know you all have different powers, but is there a power you share? Compassion." "So no," she said with a smile. He said, "We were designed to have different powers, so it would work well as a team." "But you are all split up." He nods. "But when we are needed, we move quickly." They traveled on in silence for a while, then stopped in a clearing at the edge of the forest for the night and made camp. She slept, and he stayed up thinking of old times. He felt its presence before it showed its face. Amun stood up and moved to stand between the sleeping queen and the mountain lion that appeared at the edge of the forest. Something was wrong. A lion would usually stay away from humans, especially humans with a campfire. Amun connected telepathically to the lion's mind and immediately realized the problem. It was sick, mentally and physically. He took control, and the animal struggled against Amun's will, but wasn't strong enough. Amun felt the fever burning instantly and could sense the lunacy in the animal's head. Keeping control of the animal, he separated himself from the lion's vitals, away from the madness, and turned it around. He walked the animal through the forest from them in any civilization for the next 4 hours while the queen slept. He found a deep cavern and directed the lion into the darkness. The lion's eyesight was still sharp, and he directed it to the deepest part of the cave. He found a crevice in the back wall and squeezed the lion through. The sharp sword tore at the lion's hide, but he held fast and emerged into a small room just big enough to hold the sick animal. Once there, he shut down the great mountain lion's internal organs, one by one, and put the animal out of its misery. He wanted to be sure that the dead, disease-ridden animal cannot be stumbled upon. Invariably, he stayed alert for more sick animals along the way, but sensed none. The mountainside castle of King Alexander is an incredible sight, built right into the side of the mountain slope, and overlooks the entire capital city of the Kingdom of Kushra. The castle will stand for 1,000 years, for it is one of the only structures in Kushra with any reliable agriculture. Like many other things, it was left over from one of the prior civilizations of humans. The other structures, homes and businesses, are built on the western bank of the river Olunga. They are built with papyrus reed and river mud pulled from the riverbed when the water level is down. The Kushra pyramids, considered ancient in the time of 200 BC, stand like sentinels in the background. They arrive at the castle and are safely in King Alexander's company hours before they were expected. Amun and Eve enjoy a lovely breakfast and conversation with King Alexander. Pleasantries only. They're keeping the business talk for the upcoming summit. Then Alexander's King's Guard showed them to their rooms and posted sentries outside their door. She told Amun that she would like to rest before the others arrive, so he made his way to the balcony overlooking the courtyard. The town square is buzzing with life, with more folks trooping in the hundreds to catch a glimpse of the visiting royalty. And particularly behold the beauty of the ruler of Eden. Queen Eve is often said to be the most beautiful woman in all the 5 kingdoms. But Amun Ra got one over on them, arriving early, disguised as shoe merchants. Amun is worried about the summit. He hasn't been consumed with this feeling in a very long time. He isn't sure why he is worried either. There has been peace for ages. He stands now, arms folded, his intelligent green eyes roving through the masses of people, patiently watching the spectacle of the other rulers arriving in the distance. His gaze is so intense that if someone was to lock eyes with him, they might feel like he's probing their mind. But his powers do not work on humans, only animals. He looks more kingly than any king, past or present, standing 6'6". He is wearing a sleeveless breastplate of armor that looks as if it is made of solid gold, but rather it is of an unknown impenetrable metal and was made for him by the Eternals. Already there is a sheen of sweat building on his ivory-colored skin, and his shoulder-length dirty blonde hair is blowing in the warm desert wind. On his waist sits a kilt made from leather, and his knee-high brown leather boots look worn and comfortable. A smirk creases his lips when he thinks of seeing his brothers and sisters. They aren't exactly siblings, these protectors. Even the most intelligent scientists would not be able to wrap their heads around the idea that they were created from pure energy and transferred into vessels who finally gave birth to them. No, they wouldn't. They would probably postulate that such a phenomenon was a branch of science they hadn't come to full knowledge yet. The door creaks behind him, and although he was expecting to see one of the protectors, the face he fixes his gaze upon stretches his lips to a full-blown smile. "Cyrus," he says joyfully. "Come." They come together and embraced, as though they are father and son, because that is what they are. Not biologically. It was said by the Eternals that the immortal protectors cannot reproduce, but life does have a funny way of moving forward like a train out of control. Amun found Cyrus, an orphan at the age of 3, and raised him as his own. Cyrus lost his biological parents in an angry protest that scarred his home kingdom of Mandel. It was a lifetime ago. The people of Mandel were protesting an apparent hike in taxes that had been imposed by the then King David II, the predecessor of the current ruler of Mandel. David II was not a good king in the eyes of his people. He was a brute who always ensured he got what he wanted, whatever the cost. Bess and Nuet, immortal protectors of Mandel, felt the king was overreaching and swinging his authority without thinking things through, but they never interfered. It was not their duty, what had been ingrained in every protector by the Eternals, not to directly interfere in human affairs, except in cases where it threatened their lives. So they watched, idly, while chanting anti-monarchy songs. The noise had reached a fevered pitch, and David II, who was hiding behind stone walls, had realized the best way to approach the situation was to appear before them and speak to them. As soon as he appeared to speak to the crowd, a massive explosion rocked the streets in the castle. An ensuing explosion erupted on the floor to which the king stood. When the dust cleared, the castle was but a silhouette of what it used to be. David II had been instantly killed, and only bits and pieces of his body were found beneath the rubble of the castle bricks. The remaining survivors, seeing what happened, broke out into fighting and looting, some of them jousting past the palace guards into what remained of the castle to steal whatever they could find. The kingdom's immortal protectors, dazed from what just happened, moved into action to ensure order was brought to manage the entire situation. Amun Ra, luckily, had been there for a visit and joined the other two. Bess gathered his will and released his wonderful powers to the others, who felt it coursing through them immediately. Nuette raised her arms, electricity forming between her hands. Crackling sounds could be heard a mile away. She formed one of her signature moves, a lightning hand blast, and directed it towards the ruined part of the castle, turning the mob's attention to the other way. Amun closed his eyes, his mind transporting into the forest and summoning all of the animals he could sense to corral the angry mob. It was a fiery experience for the mob to see buffaloes, hyenas, and cheetahs galloping in the hundreds towards the scene. But the protesters were unruly, and the fighting continued. And so, Amun tapped into Bess's powers, closed his eyes once more, and connected to the ground telepathically. The ground shook violently. A part of the castle, still standing, crumbled before them. That was all the crowd needed. They fell to their knees almost at once, feeling the energy swimming inside her. Nuette amplified her voice. "Citizens of Mandel, go home. Get off the streets. Now." As if on cue, the animals moved and made a break in the circle around the mob. The citizens left the scene in single file and then broke off towards their homes, while the other protectors were dealing with the mob. Bess had busied himself with looking for survivors. He could hear cries in the rubble. Amun released the animals. He and Nuette rushed into the building to help with the rescue. They found a toddler, unharmed, in a backroom portion of the castle still standing. His caretaker left him when she felt the ground shaking. The boy's parents were castle nobles and had perished in the explosion. Once it had been confirmed that the boy, Cyrus, was truly orphaned, with no family member willing to step forward with the responsibility of catering for it, Amun took the child to Eden and raised him as his own. There wasn't a law forbidding immortals to raise humans, and so Amun raised him, teaching him the ways of the humans in Eden. David III would become the king and begin to right his father's wrongs. He would set up a committee to start rebuilding the kingdom, restoring it to its imperial glory. King David III is so well liked that there has been talks of him becoming the king of all 5 kingdoms. But that is all it was, just talks. No one person has ever been the king of it all, and there never will be, because soon the 5 kingdoms will be destroyed and lie in ruin awaiting discovery by modern day explorers. When Cyrus had come of age, he went back to the land of his birth and began to work in the palace. He was diligent and selfless in his service, that the king began to hear of his exploits. Slowly, Cyrus rose up in the ranks, till he became the commander of the Mandelian troops, a position which places him directly as the second in command, only to King David III. Now on the balcony, the joy of seeing Amun slips off his face, and his smile fades. He looks tired, and there are dark circles around his piercing blue eyes. Giving Amun a worried look, he says, "Evil is afoot, Lord Amun." Amun gives him a smile. A father gives an overreacting child and replies, "Unrest and uncertainty hangs in the air, but I would hardly call it evil. Do not let your love for the humans blind you, Amun, and do not underestimate their capacity for evil. Cyrus, calm yourself. The protectors have stopped evil from rising in the past, and we will stop it again. Cyrus closes his eyes and pinches the bridge of his nose, as if he is about to retort. The anger-filled protest that killed your parents. This has nothing to do with my parents, Cyrus reports. This isn't over taxation. Seth has something up his sleeve. The Canathians have always been outsiders and secretive. A greedy lot they are. But rumors of high-tech weaponry and military training have stirred up emotions within the other four kingdoms. I do agree with you about the weapons, and it has me on edge. But Heroes and Anuket will never let anything evil happen in Karnak. They are cut from the same stone as me. Cyrus mumbles something under his breath and looks away. Amun, knowing Cyrus's feelings about Harus, looks at him compassionately and says, I'm going to talk with Harus and find out what he knows, okay? Meanwhile, you need to be beside your king deliberating on the summit. Your king will need your alert assertions. Amun draws him closer. David is lucky to have you. There are days where I wish you played the game from my side. And be distracted constantly by Queen Eve's intoxicating beauty? Not a chance. They feel his presence before the door opens. Bess scrolls out with that winning smile pinned to his face. Immediately, Amun and Cyrus feel better, more confident in Bess's presence. Bess's powers work on everybody, even those without powers to amplify. King David III has always kept him close, and it may be the reason why he is so well liked. He may never know, because soon David III will be dead. Bess motions forward, giving him a teasing look, and says, Amun, leave him alone. He's a grown man and doesn't need your constant nagging, bringing him down. Cyrus, do I need to slap him around a little for you? Get him off your back? Cyrus breaks away from Amun, a smile returning to his face, and says, if only that would work. If you two would excuse me, I need to prepare for the meetings. He turns his back to Amun and says, Lord Amun, do well and see me before your journey to Eden. Been ages since we just sat and talked. Absolutely, son. Cyrus takes his leave. As he is about to walk through the door, he turns back with a dark look on his face. He stops as if to say something, but shakes his head and slips into a dark corridor. After formalities and quick questions to catch up, the two immortal protectors turn their attentions to the streets and watch in silence for a bit, each lost in his own thoughts. Bess breaks the silence and says, again, the humans head towards war. Sometimes I wonder if we should intervene and put the protectors in charge. Amun grimaces and turns his head to eye his immortal brother, who is still looking towards the people. Bess isn't as tall and kingly looking as Amun, but he has a confidence about him. And he is still skilled in so many ways Amun isn't. He is humble too, and does not wish to stand out. He is wearing a ruby-colored robe that covers his clothing. He could disappear into the crowd below if he wanted to. Bess has a natural way with people. They like him, even when he isn't using his powers on them. Amun chooses his words wisely. He does not want to push his agenda too hard and deflect the protectors who share his own beliefs for the humans. He knows not all of them are happy with the way that the humans are running the show. Bess, you helped me raise Cyrus and know the capacity for love within the human mind and heart. Do you not believe there is more of them like him in the world? What about your king? He is not my king, Amun. I am his protector. And yes, Cyrus is a credit to his race. But I'm beginning to think there aren't many like him. Most of them are greedy, lustful, deceiving, vile creatures. We are their protectors, but it seems we only protect them from themselves these days. I am with you, my brother, but I find myself questioning why the Eternals gave it all up for this lot. He says, pointing to a group of merchants haggling over the price of a lamb in the distance. They will not be happy until they destroy each other. I'm not sure they will be happy then. Well, you two have gotten lazy in your old age. The voice behind them makes them both smile. They turn to find her smiling too, and welcome their immortal sister, Tourette, immortal protector of Kushra. She is tall at 6 foot and lean. She is wearing a silver one-piece flame-resistant suit designed by the Eternals. A burgundy cape wraps around and covers her suit. It appears as though she has on a long dress. Once she snaps into action, the cape unravels to allow her mobility. She looks cool and collected, but she isn't one to be trifled with. Her light brown skin glows under the sunlight as she moves. When she is around humans, they can't help but stare in awe at her beauty. I could have crept up and slit your throats. As they hug it out, the door opens again and Horus, a mortal protector of Karnath, stumbles onto the balcony. He has on his default serious face. His pale ivory skin shines brightly as he swaggers towards the others. His uniform is fitting. He motions to the rest and they all hug together for some awkward seconds. "Where's Geb?" asks Amun. He's helping the security team with the arrivals of the kings and queens. Queen Isabella and Cuba are still making their way through the square. The large crowd is slowing them down, Tourette says. They all turn their attention to the square and see large clouds of steam rising and wisping off into the wind as Queen Isabella's train gently eases through the crowd. Each set of human beings created by the Eternals made it to different levels of technology before destroying themselves. The group prior to this one made it the furthest, and some of their creations are still lying around. This current group is advancing quickly and already have found out how to operate some of the machinery left behind. King David III and Isabella are good friends, and he can be seen at the edge of the courtyard awaiting her arrival, surrounded by the Mandalian and the Kushrian royal guards. The King's Guard are holding off onlookers without much trouble. The crowd is not angry, just curious. As they watch the train grind to a stop, Amun begins to think of Isis and her warnings before journeying with Queen Eve to Kushra. "Don't go, Amun," she pleaded, with plight in her voice. "Something terrible is going to happen." He replied, "I must go, especially if something terrible is going to happen. I can't leave the Queen to chance there. This is what we do. We serve and we protect. And remember, This is just a peaceful summit, with 6 immortal protectors in attendance. I do not think anyone would want to try something stupid there. You have a different set of responsibilities now, she said coldly, her gaze shifting to the adjacent room. His anger flared. I know I do, but this is something we keep secret if the others find out about them. I don't care what they think, Amun. She cut in. She's a miracle. At just the mention of his daughter, his face relaxed. Then he asked, how do you know? I shouldn't have to explain why she's a miracle. The Eternals made it clear that. He reached up and gently stroked her cheek with the back of his hand. She stopped mid-sentence and closed her eyes. He said, I know she is a miracle, Isis. And the love I have for her cannot be matched. I am talking about the summit. How do you know there will be trouble? I've seen it with my sight. He sighed. Those visions are set in the unknown future. You know you are not to meddle. Isis averted her eyes from him, and in a shaky voice she said, there's going to be a great loss of life. You have to remain here. Be careful, Isis. You shouldn't be telling me this. We cannot just turn our backs on our duties. Plus, it will arouse suspicion. The others cannot find out about us and her. He looked away and listened to the sound of their daughter playing in the other room. If they find out, they will destroy her. A defiant look crossed her face, and she said, about that, I think you are mistaken. Standing here on the balcony, he had been away from his secret wife and daughter for 3 days, and he misses them fiercely. He blinks and returns his focus to the task at hand. He turns to ask Harris of the rumors of the high-tech weapons in his kingdom, and catches his breath as a flash of light fills the horizon. What the? A sonic boom rips through the air as a world-shattering explosion erupts from the ground, sending everything in its path flying. The impact is so fierce that it bounces on the castle and sends waves with spirals to the balcony. The force pummels all 4 of them, violently crashing them against the castle walls. They fall into a heap. Then silence. Then screams. Amun blinks and squints. His vision is blurry and he can barely see beyond 2 feet. He wipes his eyes and looks around in bewilderment. Recovering from the shock, he shakes his head. He stumbles to his feet and helps Tourette up. She races to the edge of the balcony. Oh no, she screams. He can feel fear in her voice. He joins the others to watch as the scene unfolds before them. What used to be a town square has been destroyed and engulfed in flames. A charred earth rests in the middle of the town square. Queen Isabella's train and entourage are just gone. Nothing left. Smoke and debris cover the horizon. There's fire at all 4 corners of the square. The remaining humans are in a frenzy. There are people on fire, running and screaming. Amun sees a person impaled on a piece of wood from a dwelling that has been blown apart. The castle seems to be the only structure unharmed by the blast. A human arm with a bloody silk sleeve still attached and gold rings on the fingers hits the castle wall and lands on the balcony in a wet smack thud, followed by screams for help, is what jolts them into action. Amun closes his eyes and concentrates on the forest beyond the far side of the Alonga and calls out to the beast that can lift him off this balcony. Within seconds, 4 giant albatross appear in the air and dive towards the balcony at blinding speeds. They perch on the railing, flapping their wings, their eyes glazed with Amun's binding spell awaiting further commands. With his game face on, Lord Amun looks at the others and says, "Our rides are here." Tourette looks at him and rolls her almond-shaped eyes as her cape unravels and a bright red flame appears under her feet. The flame lifts her in the air and carries her off the balcony. The other 3 shrug, climb on the birds, and take flight. As they descended on the carnage, Amun is scanning the destruction for Cubai, hoping he was fast enough to form his diamond armor to have been spared. The blast was so sudden that he would have had to use an incredible amount of energy to arm himself that quickly. After a moment, he spots him in the fire, lifting debris off of trapped humans, and Amun releases his held breath. He focuses on a pack of desert wolves he senses in the area as he sets Bess down in a central area to power up. All the immortals immediately feel his power running through them. Bess moves quickly through the thick black smoke looking for survivors as he amplifies his power to the others. They are powerful without him, but his amplification makes them stronger. Not just their superpowers, but their natural senses become crisp. Amun sets Horus down on the riverside of the square, and he himself remains in the air for the time being. Horus focuses on the ground under the river Olunga. With his arms outstretched, he connects to the land. The water looks as though it's boiling as the ground beneath it tears loose. He lifts a massive section of mud from the river and drops it onto some of the burning structures. Horus seems relieved that it worked. Amun thinks it would have been nice to have Anuket or water powers here. He watches Horus do this several times along the bank of the river, putting out fires, destroying the waterfront businesses. Tourette, on the ground now, eyes QB, coming out of the large burning structure with an armload of humans. She gives him a look of anticipation, and he nods to her, giving her the all clear. She throws her arms out and a blue flame shoots out of her hands in shape of a wall blocking the humans from most of the harmful fire caused by the explosion. Just then, a blur makes its way through the destruction and stops in front of the blue flame wall, and Geb appears. He pushes an unseen force of kinetic energy at the wall and uses it to scrape the large burning building and some of the smaller burning structures into the river. Tourette turns with the wall, arms outstretched. The desert wolves arrive and start surrounding the remaining humans, corralling them to a safe place near the castle. Cubai, Bess, and Geb are moving structures and debris, looking for survivors, but no more are found. Amun lands next to Bess and releases the birds. All of the immortal protectors tapping into Bess's powers can wear him down and leave him vulnerable. In these types of situations, his location is always the meeting place to ensure no one gets left behind. He hasn't exerted himself too much today. The powers displayed so far could have been accomplished without his help. Cubai can become weak as well, especially after powering up so quickly to avoid the blast. Geb is carrying him towards the others. Geb sets Cubai down and turns to the others and looks around with an unsettling look on his face and asks, "Where's Horus?" Amun scans the riverbank and doesn't see him. He will be found later at the castle and questioned as to why he left, stating only that he wanted to check on his king. The bigger fires are out, but there are several small fires spread out over the whole expanse of what used to be the square. Amun closes his eyes, and tapping into Bess's powers, he calls to the wind through his mind. The wind picks up and starts to howl. Ash and smoke are caught up in the wind and twist together as if they are dancing. Amun, with his eyes closed and his arms outstretched, directs the ash-filled wind low towards the surface of the water. It skims the river and then flies above them, twirling and spinning. Black clouds are formed, and then comes the rain. It rains more than this dry part of the world has ever seen. The local citizens are awestruck, and for a few minutes they forget the tragedy that has just plagued their town and stare at the sky. The rain comes down so hard it was washing the mud and debris into the river. The mud is pushing on one of the few dwellings still standing, and it starts to crumble under the pressure. As the structure starts to come apart, a blinking light can be seen within the walls. Geb disappears in a burst of gold streaks. He uses his kinetic powers to shove the dwelling aside and expose the source of the light. It is a metal box with wires and other blinking lights. As Amun approaches, he suspects this could be some type of machine that has caused both blasts, the one in Mandel and the one here, and recommends Geb cover it in a kinetic shield until they can figure out what it is and if it can be powered down. The others arrive and stare at the box. They are not sure what it is, but are not wanting to take chances either, as they quickly discuss what to do with the box that explodes. The force of the blast is so strong it pushes Geb backwards about 30 feet, and the expansion of the kinetic shield knocks the others to the ground, his feet making deep tracks in the mud from his slide. A grunt of surprise escapes him as he forces the shield to hold the blast. Amun, getting up from the ground, looks at Geb's face and can tell he is using all he has and is obviously leaning on Bess's power to hold it in. Bess drops to his knees and then to his elbows with a strained look of pain on his face as he gives Geb everything he has. Geb's kinetic force is usually invisible, but the power of the explosion within is causing abstract colors to swirl against the dome, and everything inside the shield disappears behind a cloud of smoke, mud, and debris. There are loud crackling noises in the air that sound like thunder. Every person, human or not, within 100 feet can feel the kinetic energy raising hairs on their skin. The kinetic shield is now covering a circumference of about 70 feet. The others are quick to scramble and move to help him, but by the time they reach him, the force within the shield dwindles, and he is able to release the kinetic energy. Geb drops to his hands and knees, closes his eyes, and is trying to control his heavy breathing. After a few moments, he composes himself, opens his eyes, and sees Amun's outstretched hand. Amun helps him up, and they join the others standing at the edge of an enormous crater in the earth where the box stood just a few moments ago. Geb sways on his weak legs. Amun and Tourette reach out to steady him. Amun looks down and sees no bottom in sight. It is one of the most amazing and disturbing sights any of them have ever seen, and they have been alive for a very long time and have seen many amazing and disturbing things. Bess is wiped out and Kibai is starting to come around. Nobody is speaking, each lost in their own thoughts. As they make their way to Bess, Geb stops and looks around at the entire scene of destruction, takes it all in, and with a disturbed look plastered on his face. He is just as tall and kingly looking as Amun Ra. He is wearing muddy, sand-colored pants, tucked into his dark brown knee-high leather boots. His breastplate is similar to Amun's, but his long metal sleeves made with strange, curious hinges. He removes his full-face helmet, and his dark brown skin is slick with sweat. He looks at each of them. His eyes are so dark brown they almost look black. He says, "We need to call a meeting with all 10 after we clean up here. You will go back to your kingdoms. and put your things in order, and we meet at the temple. Once Bess and Kubai are able to move, all but Geb head towards the castle. The scene there is horrific. Kushra's doctors are tending to the wounded. Amun sees many without limbs and burns covering their bodies, and he grimaces. He is not sure if the threat is over, and he wants to check in on the remaining kings and queens. He looks for Cyrus in the crowd, but doesn't see him. In fact, he will not see him again until the morning of the first battle of the War of the Kingdoms, as it will be known in modern-day history books. The wolves are still surrounding the terrace in a half circle. The crowd has calmed, and the healthy are helping the sick. He realizes that the wolves are no longer needed and releases them. They wander off scared and confused. He looks out at the enormous crater and sees Geb standing at the edge, looking in. He turns to the others and tells them to stay here and keep their eyes open. He heads towards the castle entrance and sees heralds emerging from the dark corridor. They pass each other without even a glimpse. As he makes his way to the safe room, deep within the bowels of the castle, he thinks back to the explosion in Mandel many years before. It wasn't as large as this one, and he is sure once the bodies have been counted, it will have been half as devastating as well. Isis was right, of course. He wonders, not for the first time or last time, how much she really knows about the future, and how she doesn't go crazy with all of that knowledge. When he thinks these thoughts, his love for her grows. When he enters the safe room, he is received with a friendly hug from Eve and angry glares from Alexander and Seth. They are all shaken and very upset. Eve asks, Isabella and David? Amun gives her a look of sorrow and shakes his head. Her frown becomes a straight line, and with a quick nod she says, well, Eden is ready to do our part to help the other kingdoms recover from this tragedy. Amun continues his sorrowful look, but his face does not reflect his internal feelings of admiration for the young queen. She is truly a remarkable human being, and one of the many reasons he loves humans so much. At that very moment, an inner voice of doubt speaks in his mind, saying, the humans are responsible for this tragedy. He is snapped out of his thoughts when Alexander slams his fist against the surface of the table at which he sits. Amun blinks and looks at him. King Alexander states, it was one of you. How can humans have technology of this magnitude? Amun peels his gaze from Alexander and glares at Seth, of whom the rumors are floating about technological weapons, and says through gritted teeth, I do not know how they can, but I intend to find out. King Seth returns his glare with confidence and says nothing. He dared not go toe-to-toe with Lord Amun without Horus's presence. Even then, he isn't sure he would. The stare continues for a few seconds, as if Amun realizes Seth's thoughts. He turns his attention back to Queen Eve and says, the summit is called off. I will have your things ready to vacate within the hour. Eve trusts Lord Amun with her life and simply replies, very well. He then turns and disappears through the doorway without another word.